This clip will be entitled Trump, Mass Immigration and Two Types of Liberalism. I would say that in the Western world today, liberalism is the dominant ideology. Although there are not so many political parties that would have a word liberal in their name, the liberalism is really a dominant ideology. For instance, if you have a political quarrel between left and right wing parties, you would have really a conflict in today's Western world, a conflict between liberals that would have some reservations, for instance, about the same-sex marriages, and the liberals that would have, for instance, some reservations about the free speech. For instance, they would have more support for political correctness, which limits to some extent the the cultivation of the free the usage of free speech. But you would have really a quarrel between liberals of two types, not just some conservative and socialist quarrel, because it would look totally differently. If in the Western world, the constitution, for instance, constitutions which are liberal, which are a liberal concept, they are generally more or less accepted, and everybody is playing more or less by the rules of those constitutions. They were written in the golden era of liberalism in the late 18th century and early 19th century. So you would have two types of liberalism then. And I would argue, although the word liberal means something totally different in the United States. Usually it's understood that the liberal is a social democrat. But now when the Democratic Party is going more left, then it becomes, even for the Americans and American political analysts, it's becoming clear that of course liberal, that it doesn't mean a leftist. The leftist is something completely different. So the liberal really means someone who puts the individual person and her rights first. And you can do it in many ways. For instance, you could be like Donald Trump. I would say Donald Trump is also liberal, because yes, he is, because it could be shocking for many Americans to hear that, but Donald Trump is really a liberal. He just is not wanting to accept more immigrants from countries which are not culturally liberal, which are very traditional, which have a dominant, very non-liberal religion, for instance, which have problems with abiding the law. And you could put in those places, you could put most of the Muslim countries and most of the Latin American countries, for instance. So when you import many people from those cultures, you would make Western society less liberal. Western society, like American society, less liberal. The same would apply to, I would say, the European countries who accept migrants from Maghreb and the Middle East. That would be the same. If you accept more people with illiberal views, then you make the society less liberal. But you can also understand liberalism as some sort of maybe not an ideal of having a free flow of goods and people and so on. And thinking according to this philosophy, you would say that you should have open borders and you should treat everybody in the same way, although they come from many different cultures and they have many different views. And this would be some sort of more dogmatic approach. So you would have two types of liberalism. One approach, one type would be a pragmatic liberalism. And this one was already recognized, and it was advocated by Montesquieu in the 18th century. Montesquieu said that liberty could be measured. You could have more or less liberal society. He also invented this division between the powers, the executive and the legislative power, because in the middle, in between, you would have some sphere